Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you in another video. All right, so a lot has been said about John Wall joining the Clippers and how they're going to be an immediate contender. You guys know I'm a Clipper hater. I'm going to start off by saying that so nobody gets that confused. But I'll try my very best to put on my unbiased hat right now and legitimately just talk about the Clippers dynamic as I understand it. I didn't take a look at the entire roster, and I know they've lost a few pieces, so I'm pretty sure there's more to understand than what I have right now. But all in all, what I'm thinking about is just the overall core of what they have, and it's all about health for the Clippers. But if they're healthy, and the players that we know, come back as the players they were, they are going to be an incredibly serious contender. And when I say incredibly serious, yeah, yep, that good. So my thing about them though is just like any other situation with players that have injury issues is, are they going to be able to last through the season? And if they aren't, do you have enough insurance to hold them down? So that's really going to be the question about the Clippers. But what I can say is they've made some really good acquisition. The Coffee acquisition I thought was fantastic value, and there were a few others that they had, and plus they have some players on the back of their bench. Um, a guy that they drafted last year with some serious hops and players like that I think they could slip in and give them some really good production at very good value. So looking at the Clipper situation, what really stands out though for me is just obviously the return of Kawhi Leonard, the return of Norman Powell. Paul George unfortunately did miss the last game of the season in a weird situation where he got hit with health and safety protocol, and I just thought that was horrible. Horrible and unfortunate, but it is part of the game. So I'm pretty sure he'll be coming back with a vengeance. And when you bring back Kawhi Leonard and you add, of course, John Wall, you're talking about someone who can really push the pace, and the defensive uh, ability that John Wall and Kawhi Leonard provide could be potentially deadly as well. That's not something many are talking about because obviously both of those guys are coming back from serious injury. Last we saw Kawhi, he was not the same defender, but at the same time, you got to understand that even though he may not be quote unquote the same defender, he's still going to get stops just off the strength of his skill and his intellect and his hands, which we obviously know the claw is very gifted physically. So when you consider what he brings to the table and you consider the gifted nature of John Wall's defensive game, they're going to have very good sequences of impactful defense. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they handle putting together a system that works for themselves, of course, with Ty Lue, of one of the great coaches in this league right now. So we're looking at Norman Powell as well and how he can come in and immediately provide scoring. I'm curious to see how he's going to heal from his injury, how his conditioning is going as this off season is going, and of course, we just circle back around to John Wall and how quickly he can get acclimated into what it is that they do and how much they've needed what it is that he brings to the table. Finally, the Clippers got themselves a point guard. Finally, they got themselves a facilitator, more so importantly. And I think with him being on the team now, you're going to see much more cohesive basketball play, and that should make for a whole lot of victories in the regular season, you guys. I think the Clippers, if they are 100% healthy, they could be a team that wins upwards of 55, maybe even 60 games in the regular season. I do think they'll be one of the top 3 teams in the Western Conference in the regular season. The problem is, I also see many scenarios where those guys are going to pluck away based on injuries. You know what I mean? And that's something that you almost expect is imminent because of the type of players and the specifics of who these players are. So if I'm to hang my hat on one way or another, I'm guessing they're going to have to deal with the same problems. But if for some reason all of that comes together and they don't, yeah, the Clippers could possibly win the entire thing. They could. It could be the Clippers, fighting amongst other teams as well. Of course, I think there are other contenders, very worthy ones, and we have to see what other teams do because obviously some big trades are on the way. But as of right now, yeah, you got to consider them one of the better teams in all of the association. So, really looking now at them just head on, I'm just curious to see, what they do with their bench. I know they've lost Hartenstein or Hartenstein. You know me, never know the name, never heard it, but obviously we speak about the players so much. He now went to the New York Knicks, so that's going to be some size out the door, but they also have Zubac in place, who they read up on a pretty solid deal. So, of course, he'll continue to hold down the fort in that way. So for me, I'm wondering who else is on the back of the bench. Of course, got to find out. But all in all, when you look at the Clippers, you just have to understand that the field is a bunch of long, young players who are not dealing with injury issues per se. You look at what the Timberwolves put together with that dynamic. I'm not so sure the Clippers really have what they need to really deal with that type of size at this point. So maybe that's something they can look at. Obviously, you're going to pay attention to where Aiden goes. Maybe he ends up back east, less size out here to consider in that regard. You look in different directions. Golden State Warriors, will they have enough to keep up with him if they were to make a trade like this? Obviously, you think so, given the fact that they have so much talent in place, or rather no trade, obviously, but just given what their roster looks like matched up against some of these teams in the West, they look pretty solid. Now, the question is, since we mentioned the word trade by accident, would they be in the mix for Kevin Durant? Stumbled onto something. And I think the word trade is applicable because you do have to consider the injury issues of the players that they have in place and the fact that a guy like Kevin Durant is out there. Now, I haven't heard any linkings to them to Kevin Durant. I think that they are very much enriched in the culture that they've put together with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Bringing John Wall to them is a very good fit. Bringing KD to the situation in place of one of those two wings is also a very good fit. So, there are a lot of options that the Clippers could consider, and they do have the package in regards to trying to make a deal like that take place. They may not have the picks, but they do have the players. So that's how I'm looking at the situation. I don't know if they'd have the best package, but when you consider what Paul George or Kawhi Leonard can, garner in terms of value in this league, that might make the Nets pounce on a deal. So I don't know if the Clippers would be willing to do that, but consider Kawhi's injury history. You may consider that. So I don't know where Ballmer sits on that idea, but it's out there. At any rate, there are also other things they can do, of course, in trade in that same vein. So you can keep an eye on the Clippers. I don't know if they want to clear up some cap space or just kind of settle in on what they have, because a lot of people believe they can win it right now. So standing pat makes a lot of sense if you believe that those guys are going to stay healthy. And, it is a situation where the Clippers could also find themselves in a situation where they maybe trade a few guys on the back of the bench and even booster themselves with even more star power. Not necessarily superstar power, but just to become even more top heavy if they were to choose to. So there are options there. You have guys like Robert Covington back in the back of the bench as well, who can come up and play multiple positions to give them a lot of versatility. Nicholas Batum has re-signed with them as well. Same thing. A good mixture of vets and young players that can ultimately play both sides of the floor and keep continuity amongst themselves with ball movement and things like that you ultimately appreciate. With the pace that I think John Wall is going to put them in as well, it's going to be very, very, very it's very, very different from what it is that you've seen the Clippers play with. More so trying to figure out team ball and working the ball around. Now you got a legitimate pace-keeping superstar level point guard if John Wall gets back to the old level. And with his speed, that's going to be very key. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, they're going to be running on the break. Those young players running on the break as well. That can be very, very fun. So I think the Clippers are going to be one of the better teams, man. It's all about health, though. How does Kawhi Leonard respond to falling and getting hit, or his first, minor injury? Will it be a situation where it sits him down for an extended period of time? Same with John Wall. What is to be expected from John Wall having not been seen for 2 or 3 years? Can he get out there and be that player that they need, or will they need to acquire some insurance to assure that they have what it is that they need at that position? So it's going to be a lot of questions. I think a lot of people are hanging their hat on these Clippers prematurely without having those questions answered. And based on the level of the talent, I can understand that. But what we know is that, this league is about youth at this point, and it's also about durability and depth. And depth, the Clippers definitely have. Durability and youth. Durability, not so much youth. I think they have enough young players. So it's one of those situations where I say, okay, Clips, I don't know how long you're going to be able to, have this championship caliber window be open. But I think it's open right now. I do. I think that you legitimately have a chance to put up a banner for the first time if you can stay healthy and possibly play the buyout market, very well. If for some reason somebody comes about that you can acquire that makes you even better, I think they would be a top candidate, of course, to pick that player up and make themselves much, much better. So at that point, depending on where they're at with their record, will determine how I look at them. But yeah, early on, you got to consider them a top 5, maybe even top 3 team in the Western Conference. But it's a but. You're gonna get hit with a lot of young teams. I can't stress it enough. Rockets, Sacramento, OKC, Timberwolves. You got a lot of young teams coming at you. San Antonio, young bodies. I think it would be very wise for the Clippers to give themselves plenty of insurance for those 4 players that they have coming back from injury. It's one of those situations where I just understand that if they lean on the young players more so, I think they'll be able to withstand a lot of what's coming at them. But if they ask those superstars to take on some of those assignments, and they're guarding these young players that can basically move faster than anything we've ever seen, I think you could be at risk for putting those players at risk. That's what I would say to Clipper fans. You gotta manage your team very well, Ty Lue, because it's gonna be a very long season with those older guys who are gonna have to go out there against that young field of players and teams. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to the Clippers. Definitely that, is will their youth keep them afloat, or will they have to rely upon the old guys too much? And if so, if the old guys are relied on so much, will they be able to hold up? So yeah, that's the question. That's the question. They'll answer it for us, of course. Them getting out to a good start is not that important to me, to be honest with you. I don't necessarily think that, because they have such new pieces, particularly John Wall, who's going to have to learn that offense and then learn his new body, whatever his body's going to allow him to do going forward. If he's the same, cool. If not, the adjustment will be there for him to make. And then from there, once they become more used to one another, that synergy comes along. I think from there they'll be off and running into the rhythm if they can stay healthy. That's how I predicted. So I don't think they'll get off to a quick start, but after a good 3-4 weeks, they should be rolling. They should be getting wins very easily if everybody's healthy. So that's how I see their season going, man. But once it comes to the playoff time, if those guys aren't 100% healthy and they don't have the requisite amount of size to go up against some of the guys they're going to see, they're going to be going home early. No matter what people think, they're going to need to get some size. They're going to have to deal with basically what the Timberwolves and the Cleveland Cavaliers dynamic is. That's a precedent being set. The OKC Thunder as well. You better have some length on your team. You better have it. So I'm looking for the Clippers to acquire that if they don't already have it on the team. So that is what I got to say, man. My name is BDF44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.